Hey, good afternoon everybody. This is Marion from Life Unboxed, and today I have a story to tell you. Let's just say right now it's March 2019. I'm not going to give the date or the day because who knows when this will be posted. So I'm sure it will be posted before April. So I'm just saying it's March. And I have a story to tell you about my time in Texas in 1977. Actually, it's a trip to Texas, not actual time in Texas. I mean, we did stay there for about 3 weeks. But let's see, it all began in early winter of 1977. Well, not early, I think it was after Christmas. Let's see, I have a story that I did write about it, and I even tried to have it published in Redbook magazine and the Reader's Digest, but they sent it back to me saying that it wasn't what they were looking for at that particular time, so that was a bust. But anyway, my kids, we had 5 children. And it was, like I said, January, I believe it was January of 77. And it was bitter, bitter cold. And it was in the evening time. I think my husband had just got home from work. And it was so cold. We lived in a big, huge farmhouse in Poestenkill, New York. Poestenkill, New York. And it was a big farmhouse with many, many rooms. I think we had like 6 bedrooms, and we had an up and down stairs. It may have been 3 floors. I'm not remembering quite specifically, but it was a huge farmhouse. And it was drafty. And so my husband and I were talking about, let's go somewhere where it's warm, where we can stay warm year round. So I wrote to all of the chambers of commerce asking for information. I wrote Florida, I wrote Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Arizona, Arkansas, and got all that information. And in the meantime, when we did get it in the mail, because we had no email at that time or internet or any of that, so we had to do it by snail mail. So each day I got information from these different states, and long story short, we decided on Texas. I'm going to read you a little bit of this, and then we'll talk about it. And I started out with the mail. It was finally here. After weeks of requests from chambers of commerce throughout the United States, our requests were here. We chose the states of Maryland, Florida, New Mexico, and Texas. Oh, I was wrong there. After reading thoroughly all the brochures, we decided on Texas. Let me explain how we got to the place of moving cross country. It was one of those coldest days in January in upstate New York. Wind was blowing, snow and whirlwinds around our farm-like home. We were tired of having 3 months of warm weather and 6 months of cold. At least that's the way it felt to us. We had a friend that lived up the hill from us, and she decided to go along with this plan as well. She had a daughter and a dog, and we had 1 daughter and 4 boys. And a 1967 Ford Duster for transportation. Actually, it was a 1967. And I quit my job, my husband, and took a 3-week vacation just in case things didn't work out. We sold what we could and packed the rest in a small pull-along trailer, and off we went with a grand total of $375 in our pocket. Can you imagine that? We were off to Texas. Now, I printed out a car that was similar to the one we had because I couldn't find a picture in my repertoire of photographs let me just say that we had a lot of pictures from that time, but we left them in a mobile home that got ruined with moisture. So most of those pictures we had at that time were ruined, unfortunately. This is the picture of the car that we had 5 children and 2 adults in. And let me say, my 13-year-old, Patrick, as you know, as the paddy wagon, he was an adult because he was very large. Well, not very large, but he was a 13-year-old kid. And this is a picture of the 5 children and Patrick is taking the picture. There's Christina right there smiling, and in the back is Tim. Then on the left is Douglas, and on the right is Gene Jr. And so Douglas at the time, the one on the right, was, I don't know, 5 years old? Maybe? Yeah, 5. 77. Oh, he was born in 71, so yeah, he was 6, but he was little for his age. And so he rode up in the back of this car, way up in the back where the window, where the back window is. There was a flat ledge, so that's where he took his naps and slept, and he played his games and whatnot back there. He did sit in the back seat for a period of time, but when he took a nap, that's where he took a nap at. So, okay, so my family is adventurous, to say the least. No hesitation in leaving friends and family. We were on a road trip. My son Douglas was the youngest at that time, being around 5. And the smallest. He fit comfortably up to the back window of the Duster, and that was his space. 7 people and a Duster. What were we thinking? So the trip to Texas was uneventful. The scenery was spectacular and the rest areas clean and comfortable. We brought along a very large tent that we used for camping and planned to camp on the way to our destination. Our first stop to actually sleep and stay a while was in Tennessee. That was beautiful. We had a campground. I think it was, I don't know, $3 a night to spend the night there. And my friend also had her tent, and she set up her tent, and we had grills, and so we cooked and we slept, and excuse me, in the middle of the night woke up to this god-awful chirping sound, and it was the frogs. I didn't know that at the time, being pretty much of a city girl. The first time I lived in the country was in that farmhouse that we lived at. So now, mind you, that we did stop at rest areas in different states and rested, but not actually slept. One night in particular that I remember, slumped in the front seat of the Duster while the kids and the hubby took a rest on the benches in green grass. I noticed my middle child was not anywhere in the mix. That was Tim. Tim was our, I'm not going to say troublemaker, but he was always up to something, always. Then I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and speeding down the grassy hill past my unbelieving eyes with a blanket over his head, singing, "Ooh, ooh," trying to be Batman or a ghost, anything to scare me or whoever he could. And he did succeed in waking half the guests that were trying to get some rest on that night. So, yeah, that was particularly entertaining, I must say. Our little trailer was not doing well at all with the hills and the mountains we had to climb. The Duster could no longer haul such a load, and we ended up storing our possessions, and we took out what we could and strapped them to the roof of the car and off again on our road trip. Can you imagine what that must have looked like on the road? I wish I had those pictures. They were quite hilarious. As stated previously, Tennessee was our first official stop and stay for a few days for rest and relaxation. We set up our huge tent It comfortably fit our large family, and my friend had her own accommodations. Our camping area had a large in-ground pool that my older children took full advantage of. So much so that the night came, and so did the night sweats, the chills, and the pain. Yes, all three had a serious case of sunburn. What was I thinking? Sunscreen went on directly before any more sun exposure on this trip. They endured, and life went on, and so did the road trip. Waking up in the middle of the night was something of a surprise. The night noises. Being a city girl, I'd never experienced before, but I quickly got used to that since I found out that was only frogs making the sound, and frogs were something we had to get used to sleeping out of doors. And I hate frogs. Hate frogs. Anyway, our time had quickly come to an end in Tennessee, and we had to get on the road again. I must say that the state was by far my favorite. The people, the scenery, and all will make an indelible mark on my spirit and my mind. We could smell it in the air, we could see it, and the seagulls circling in the sky, the water and its unmistakable sound and smell. We pulled alongside a small road that led right to the sound. There it was, all its majestic beauty, the cool green waters of Gulf of Mexico. The children were in awe. Being city kids, the only water that they were used to was the local park with the community pool. So this was certainly a rare treat for them. Being the adventure it was for us, we hadn't thought about where we were going to stay or what kind of job we could find. The carefree spirits that we were we decided to take on one step at a time. Find a camping area and set up camp. That is exactly what we did. What an adventure this was for the kids with all the woods around. They busied themselves with hiking, exploring, and fishing. Money was beginning to dwindle, and no matter how you try to keep your problems from kids, they have a sixth sense when things are amiss. Our middle son Tim was among the missing one day, all day. And as I was beginning to get really worried that something serious happened to him, there he comes walking down the road with a huge smile on his face. Normally that would be a good sign, but if you knew our son Tim, you would really start to wonder. What has he gotten into now? Fortunately, there was no police or irate parents following him. That was a good sign. Apparently my son overheard his father and I talking about finances, and he, my 12-year-old son, decided to do something about it. Unbeknownst to anyone, even his siblings, this child went down to the local supermarket, within walking distance at least for him, and helped the old folks load groceries into their cars. At least that is the story he told us at that time. What a kid. All of the $35 he owned went to our needs. Everyone was enjoying this adventure. It was still an adventure because so far no one had acquired a job yet, or for that matter, a real home, so that the adventure continued. One day my husband came home. We called it home because that's where we lived. We called it that because in essence it was our home. Told me he found a job. He was to start the following Monday, and it was Thursday. Being a nurse, I was sure I would find a job. That was not the problem. Getting a Texas license would present a long and drawn-out affair, and it proved that. I don't know, because I didn't do it. You'll see where this story goes. Money was getting low, food was getting low, and morale was getting low. Why we decided to move back to New York is still a mystery to me, but we did. We started the long trek back home the Sunday before Gene was to start his new job. This time the trip or adventure was not quite the same as coming to Texas. In fact, the mood was quite the opposite, quiet and restrained. And at that, I will end that story for now and continue the series in a second video. I hope you guys are all enjoying this story, and I hope you tune in to find out what happened on the road back to New York. It's quite the adventure. Don't forget to thumbs up the video, comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell so you'll know when I post another video. Don't forget to be kind to one another. It is a rough world out there, and it's getting rougher every day. I thank you for watching, and I love you all. Take care. Mwah. Hey everybody, it's Marion again, and yes, it's still March, so we're good. So where we left off at the story is when, let me back up. So we were in New York, decided that we wanted somewhere warm, so we decided to go to Texas. So we left off where we are moving back to New York. Now mind you, we had given up our house. We were renting it. We weren't, we didn't buy it. And so we had no place to live, although my husband did have a job to go back to, because we were only gone, I think, less than 3 weeks, maybe 3.5 weeks. So he still had a job to go to. So that was a positive, and that's another reason why we decided to go back, because we didn't feel like Texas was the place for us. We left family, friends, and we just didn't feel right. So here we are. I felt in my spirit something was not quite right, but I couldn't put my finger on it at what it could be. Children are very resilient. Give them an idea and they run with it. Our food supply was very low and limited. We had bread, peanut butter, and water. Good bottled water, but water nonetheless. One of the kids said they had an idea that was to pretend that the peanut butter was steak and that the water was cold iced tea. When we make the sandwiches, they instantly turned into steak sandwiches. What a brilliant idea and imagination to boot. This whole going back to New York ordeal was certainly a test of my faith, and I'm afraid I failed that test miserably. So backtracking a little bit, in 1976 we all went to a non-denominational church, and we received Jesus as our Lord and Savior, all of us, the whole family, except for my husband. He didn't believe, and to this day, I don't think he, well, not this day because he's passed away, but even up to his day that he passed away, I don't think he did believe, but I don't know. I can't say that for sure. So, but my kids, they kept a good and upbeat spirit and a smile that pulled me through. They knew God would not let us down. He might put us through some tests, but he would never, never let us down. And he would never give us more than we could bear. It's the transmission, my husband said to me as we were pulled off to the side of the road. Thank God we were not back on that 6-lane superhighway that Texas is noted for, but on the side of the road looking for a AAA assistance. My husband knew cars, and he knows cars. He knew cars, so I knew he was right, and we needed a new transmission. Now, mind you, we have no money. Okay, so this one could not be fixed. It was Sunday, no gas stations or AAA assistance today. It was late in the day and everyone was tired, and it was very buggy in Arkansas. Extremely buggy. We were near a shopping center and we all pushed the car into the shopping center to wait the early evening and night out. It was evident that my kids were praying, and I think they were afraid, but they didn't show any sign of it. They must have been repeating the psalm, "My God has not given me the spirit of fear, but of love, peace, and of a sound mind." I prayed too. We needed money. We needed food. We needed a new transmission. God would provide. How he did it was up to him, not me. A face came to mind, and I prayed. The face of that person was my pastor in our little storefront church in New York. One call and our troubles seemed to be over. Little did I know they were just beginning. Pastor would send us enough money for the transmission, a motel, and a good night's sleep, and some decent food via the local Western Union. God is good, but trying to keep the mosquitoes off the kids was not. My husband was constantly waving the bugs off the kids, but to no avail. They bit anyway and made for a very uncomfortable rest. No rest for anyone. The tow truck came and took the car, and the driver told us of a local motel within walking distance. We found the Western Union, and the money was wired safe and securely. After a nice long nap, everybody was feeling refreshed and wildly hungry. A thrifty diner nearby filled our empty tummies, and a slow walk back to the motel proved to be exactly what we needed. It took a whole day to fix the transmission, but finally our little duster was back on the road. He never complained much, our oldest son Patrick, but today was different. He was doubled over and crying softly with the pain. I knew it was more than a tummy ache, but didn't let on. I didn't want to frighten him or the other kids. He needed to see a doctor and fast. All I could think of was appendicitis. We spotted a local sheriff's office and got directions to the nearest hospital emergency room. Getting medical attention and or medication was near impossible without insurance or money. We had neither. And I'm thinking back to that, and I'm wondering why we didn't, with Gene's job, he had a really good job with General Electric, so we must have had some kind of insurance, but I don't remember it. His name was finally called, and the doctor hovered over our son. He needs IV antibiotics, he muttered, I guess to me, but he never looked at me or my husband. He had kind of a disgruntled look on his face and the attitude of no insurance, no attention. My son had a severe case of gastroenteritis. Hooked up to IVs and a terrified look on his face, I tried to comfort him. The doctor took a long look at the younger boys. Not that he wanted to, but after all, he was a medical profession and couldn't help but see the bites on the boys' bodies. I was told they had impetigo, a very contagious skin condition caused by you guessed it, bug bites, and scratching those bug bites cause a not-so-nice bug to enter into their open sores and cause a serious infection. They too needed antibiotics, but the kind you apply to the skin. Thank God, no IVs for them. By this time, my older son was starting to feel better, and we left the hospital 6 hours later with prescriptions for antibiotics, cleansing agents, ointment to clear up their infection. And again, we had no money. At this point in time, my middle son, Tim, you know, the dear boy that helped the older people to their cars with their groceries? Yeah, that one. He tells me the truth about how he obtained the money. And trust me, it wasn't helping dear old people. It was by holding a tin can for some cause. I'm not sure what it was. I didn't ask him. I didn't want to know. I wanted to scream and kick something, but what could I do? The damage has already been done, and to this day, well, before my husband passed away, he was sure that this was the bad stuff that we went through because of that deal with him collecting money for some worthy cause. Oh well. So, so God is merciful and God is forgiving. God as well, and God is forgiving as well, and knew that what Tim had done was out of the goodness of his heart to help his family. He just went about it the wrong way. Sitting in the hospital parking lot trying to make a plan. As I was reading the doctor's instructions, I started to laugh out loud, so hard that my family thought I was losing my mind. Here is why the doctor's instructions were such. Here is why the doctor's instructions were as such. scrubbed the skin of the boys with bites, not lightly, but very hard, to open the skins and let the soap, which was Physohex, something they use for preoperative patients, cleanse the affected area. Then apply the ointment and do this twice a day until healing takes place. Now mind you, we are in the middle of Maryland, no friends, no family, no home, no money. But we still had our faith. At least my kids did. I had, I'm sorry to say, thought God had surely abandoned us. Back to the sheriff's office we go, asking him if he knew any place that helps people in our situation. And he directed us to the Salvation Army. As we pulled into the Salvation Army parking lot, steam began to pour out of our radiator. What more could happen to us? Another disaster with our little duster. God had given us His mercy and grace to get through. He said He would never give us any more than we could bear. Well, we were just about at the bear stage. After an extensive interview with the Salvation Army captain, she agreed we needed their help. Trust me when I say this, to this day, I never walk by the Salvation Army bell ringer at Christmas time without putting something in their pot. Sometimes it may not be much, but at least it's something, and it's been that way for more than 25 years, but more than 50 years now. So they helped us with the radiator and directed us to a reputable car repair service station, gave us a voucher for the radiator and a voucher for food and gas. They paid for our prescriptions and called the Red Cross so that we could use their facilities for bathing the kids. God always comes through. God bless the Red Cross is what we wrote on the blackboard as we were getting ready to leave the Red Cross building. After bathing the bug bite kids, scrubbed clean and all greased up with ointment, we left the state of Maryland. On the road again, low on money seemed to be our mojo, but we did have a tent, and my husband decided to stop at a pawn shop to sell his bow and arrow and our tent. We considered it a loan, really, as he planned to come back at a later date to retrieve all we had left in Maryland, which was the trailer also. A call to my brother gave us a place to stay for a few days until my old landlord came to our rescue with a place to live. Now, when we lived at that big farmhouse, he had mobile homes up in the back. So he gave us a 2-bedroom mobile home to stay in until we could find something more livable. Okay, so God always provides, never forget that. Our pastor came by with groceries, and the loan we made, he told us when we could get settled, we could make arrangements to pay him back. Thankfully, my husband still had a job, and all this travel took a total of almost 3 weeks. And the friend that we traveled with, remember her? Joanne. Her name was Joanne, and her daughter's name was Fatima? Something like that. I can't remember. Well, she bailed on us at the first sight of car trouble. Never offered any assistance, financial or otherwise. They decided to go back to New York as well, but they went back ahead of us. And when they found out that we had car trouble, they never offered to help or take any of the kids or myself or anybody back with them. So, but we made amends afterwards, many years later. It was all fine. Maybe we should have stayed in Texas. Maybe God had special plans for us there. We'll never know. He did make a way out for us. If we had learned anything at all on this trip, it's never to think God has forgotten you or forsaken you. For all the trouble you may be going through, God makes a way out if you are patient and ask Him for directions. Listen to His voice. Never doubt Him. He has people everywhere waiting to help you, waiting to help us. When you think all is lost, look up to the mountains from when cometh your help. So, that is the story of our trip to Texas. Never, ever will I forget that trip. Patrick was the the glue that held us all together, because he prayed, he believed, he was the strong one, and he was the 13-year-old. I should have been the strong one, but I failed the test. I surely did. But anyway, we're back. We were back. We had, I got a job. Gene was still with his job. We did find a bigger house eventually, and we moved into it. So, that's it for my story to Texas, our story. If you like this video, please give me some thumbs up, comment below. Don't forget to subscribe. Be kind to one another. It's a rough world out there. I love you all.